my first encounter with a flute of any sort was seeing someone on TV play it when I was about 5. This wasn't something that I searched up. It happened by chance. I fell in love with it when I was 5. My parents apparently wanted to get me lessons when I was 5, but our local music shop said that I was too small, too young to play it. They do make tiny flutes now for tiny 5-year-olds. The most that they had was a curved head joint, which at the time, truth be told, I had never seen one before, so I thought they were really ugly. I had my mind set on like that, the long flute. So I did have some contact with other flutists, but it was actually fairly vicarious because it was through my brother. My brother took trumpet in band. He started in 4th grade because that's about when schools, at least in the States, start their kids in band. It just so happened that the teacher that was teaching him happened to be a bit of a tyrant. So he actually told me that I should not take band. My brother was my hero. So whatever he says goes. It didn't help that I'm like a little sister, so I tend to follow around and watch people do things before I try it. So anyway, you can see why it meant so much to me that my brother gave me this CD. It was Sir James Galway's Mozart Concerto in C major for flute and harp. At that time, the internet wasn't really a thing that everybody went on, which of course dates me. I'm actually a little bit older than a lot of you think I am. I remember writing an email to my uncle when I was like 8 or 9 or something like that, and like my mom actually picked me up and put me on her lap, and she showed me how to write an email, and it was like the newest thing back then. Googling things wasn't a thing. YouTube obviously was not a thing then. The concept of YouTube just could not even be conceived at that point. My parents did take my brother and I fairly regularly to see the San Francisco Symphony. Obviously we didn't go all the time, but we went often enough that I remember it being like a really special occasion. I don't actually know how my parents knew about which concerts were happening. I'm pretty sure they weren't getting like email newsletters or anything like that. Like maybe they were getting mailed newsletters. I don't know. Beyond the CDs, beyond these concerts, beyond flute lessons, there was nothing. I didn't try to go and find more information. Everyone just kind of went to their music lessons just being spoon-fed everything. That was how people did it. At least in my circles, no one really went the extra step to go and try to find more information about what they were playing. It wasn't really a thing. At least I don't recall it being a thing to go and look up more information, because we didn't really have that kind of access to that kind of information. All of that information, as far as I have experienced, I think they were pretty much just in the libraries of music schools, which, like, as a 9 or 10-year-old, you don't have access to that unless, your teacher happens to take you there or something like that. You sort of just learned as you went to lessons. And so there were a lot of kind of, I guess, gaps of knowledge that I had by the time I got into university. Now, in university, that's when they expect that you are going to go and do your own research, and because there is the library there, so you should be wanting to go to do this research and find out more about what you're playing and stuff like that. But I didn't have that kind of training, so I kept going to my lessons expecting to be spoon-fed. I made a whole other video about this, by the way, so I will link that up here for you guys to check out. I expected to be spoon-fed because I thought that that was how you learned. The correct way to learn is to learn what the teacher tells you. The concept of going out to find more information for yourself, I guess for me, in the way that I grew up, in the culture that I grew up, that was seen as a form of rebellion, if that makes sense. It was seen as like, you don't believe what the teacher says, and so you go and find more information on your own. For those of you who are actually around my age, late 20s, early 30s, do you feel the same as me? I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm crazy, because right now that is not the case at all. Fast forward to now, I became a professional classical musician, and now I make these videos. I make these videos because I like YouTube. This platform is my creative outlet. All of the students that I have now, like literally all of them, have found me through this channel. And so they are all the type of people who have found me by going on the internet to find more information about the flute, which is the polar opposite of how I grew up learning the flute. The problem with the way I learned was that I didn't really have much access to a lot of flute information unless it was directly through my teacher. And this is the fault of no one. This is just, that was just the way it is. We didn't have Google and YouTube to Google and YouTube things about the flute when I was 10 years old. Even my research projects at school, it was highly discouraged to use any information from the internet because it was not trusted by any of the teachers. And to be fair, there was a lot of really weird information out there. I mean, there's even more weird information out there right now. Now there are actually trusted sources on the internet, whereas before, basically no one trusted the internet. The concept of IMSLP was actually very new when I was in music school. Some of you think that was not a long time ago, but now you know it was a while ago. No one trusted IMSLP. Back to my students. It's only dawned on me within the last maybe 2 years that I am contributing to all of this information that is now online. Apparently, you guys find me by Googling the flute. That's really scary to me because I'm like, I'm just making this video, okay, in my tiny little room in Seattle, by myself, talking to a camera like an idiot, okay? Somehow it is reaching you guys. I'm glad that my videos are helping you guys. It still boggles my mind because I did not grow up in this culture of accessibility. You can access any flute information you want now. It's amazing. That is how my students are finding me. So now it's not an issue of there are gaps in your knowledge because your last teacher didn't tell you something. Now it's you have gaps in your knowledge because you have access to too much information and you're reading some information here and some information there, but then there's this little bit of information in the middle that you accidentally overlooked or it just didn't come up in your Google searches. So that has actually changed the way I teach, because the way people used to teach and the way that I used to teach was that you actually withhold some information, mostly because you know it is going to be information overload. Let's say we're learning how to tongue, okay? So you walk your student through the idea of tonguing. You breathe a stream of air and then you interrupt it with your tongue. That's it. You don't talk about tongue placement. You don't talk about different kinds of like French tonguing, double tonguing, fluttered tonguing. You don't mention any of that. You just pretend like it doesn't exist. And then what you do is once they get like comfortable with the idea of tonguing, they're tonguing properly, it's not like alien to them anymore, then you're like, okay, so you know what? Now we're going to mess with where you're tonguing. But you still don't tell them about double tonguing. You still don't tell them about flutter tonguing or any of that kind of stuff. Once they get comfortable with their new placement of their tongue, then you go, okay, by the way, did you know that you could cheat and you can do double tonguing? So you can, in the same movement that you do one single tongue, you could do a second articulation to create double tongue. Tucka, 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 tucka. When they get better at that, then you teach them triple tonguing. You still don't tell them about flutter tonguing though. You see my point. That's how I used to teach. However, now, everyone has crazy access to any kind of flute music they want to listen to. It's like, it's all for free, like on YouTube and Spotify. Now people are hearing flute music where they're double tonguing or triple tonguing like crazy. They know how to tongue. They've watched lots of videos and read lots of tutorials about how to tongue, but they're like, I don't get how they tongue that fast. So I end up telling them, oh, you were listening to someone double tonguing when you only knew about single tonguing. You've done a lot of research about tonguing, but for some reason your searches just have not yielded double tonguing to you. Now it's gaps of knowledge due to crazy accessibility, which I never thought would be an issue, but I'm noticing that it is a recurring issue in several of my students. It's just because there's so much information out there now. You can be a beginner, but listen to music that has double tonguing, triple tonguing, flutter tonguing, finger slaps, and all the crazy like modern stuff, it gets very overwhelming. And I find that right now that's the issue with my students is information overload and feeling overwhelmed from the information overload. So now I need to not only fill in the gaps of knowledge that I find, I also have to walk them through how you would learn something. So instead of withholding the information and leading them by the hand, I am now drawing a map for them. It's like, okay, you need to learn this first. When you're comfortable with that, then you'll be ready to learn this. Because, you know, you don't have to think about, you know, how to actually tongue before you learn how to double tongue. A lot of my lessons have a lot of talking because I end up having to explain how all of the bits of pieces of information that they have in their head, how it's actually all linked together. I know there are teachers out there who, you know, watch these videos. I am very curious to hear from you guys. Have you had this same issue, information overload, and your students feeling overwhelmed from the information overload? Have you had to change the way that you teach too? Because I've had to radically change how I teach. I would never have agreed with the way that I teach now like 10 years ago. Times have changed. The way people learn, the way people absorb information, the way that people have access to information is just so completely different. I caught myself trying to find a book for my student to buy the other day. Turns out she could get most of the information for free. My brain is still half stuck in 10 to 20 years ago now. That's the culture that I grew up in. Like the first thought I have is, okay, what can you buy? Rather than, oh, where can you find it on the internet? Which is ironic because I'm on the internet. How does that work? I am providing some of that information overload. I am totally part of the problem here. I know this. It's been really interesting because I've had pure beginners now know things about flute playing that usually you only learn in music school. That's how much information is out there now. It's fantastic. I love it. It's great. I wish I had that kind of access to that kind of information before. Isn't this what this platform is about? This sort of like sharing of ideas, being creative. I'm glad that I'm doing what this platform does well, but at the same time, I can't deny that it is creating an issue for people who are learning. We've just gone to the other side of the pendulum completely. We've swung from not enough information to too much information. Is there a sweet spot in between? I don't think there is a sweet spot because you can't reel it back in. If it's out there, it's out there. Once you restrict it, isn't that censorship? Censorship is not good. Censorship is when you are preventing knowledge from being put out there. You are preventing literally the evolution of humankind. Knowledge is everything. Flute playing itself will just get better and better with all of this information out there. There you go. Those are my current thoughts right now on this issue that I am actively contributing to. I am working to find a way to teach that will incorporate the information overload, but I'm still not sure if the way that I'm doing it is the best way. I'm still figuring it out, but I thought that I would talk about it with you guys, since what better platform to talk about it than YouTube itself? Let me know what your thoughts are. How are you guys learning? Because I know that there's like kind of two big groups of you guys who watch these types of talking videos. One group is you are the type of person to go and research the heck out of everything and like find information about everything. The other part of you are teachers who don't say much in the comments, but I know you're watching. I want to know how you as a teacher, how you are dealing with this. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed the information overload? I'm gonna do the YouTube thing. As usual, if you like today's video, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and hit subscribe for new videos every Saturday. Hit that bell icon too, though, because, you know, YouTube's broken. If you want to watch my last video, it is playing right over here, which I will put a link to up here for you guys. If you want to follow me on my social media, they are listed down below, and you can also hang out with me every other Friday-ish on Patreon. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.